First of all, welcome everyone to tonight's Goalkeeper webinar series. We're looking at the coach's perspective. So it's a follow-on from last week's player's perspective. So here we go, tonight's coach's perspective. I have two very special guests with me this evening. I have Irene Munnelly, who is a former Meath goalkeeper and a current LGFA referee education tutor. Good evening, Irene.
Hi, how are you, Stephen?
And secondly, we have Monica Mcgurk, who is a current All-Star Meath goalkeeper. Monica was voted onto the Intermediate All-Star Team of the Year, and Monica had a birthday at the weekend. Good evening, Monica. How are you?
Hi, Stephen. How are you? How's things?
Hopefully, we get you a few new followers from that, Monica.
Oh,
They can
thanks,
wish you a happy
William.
birthday. So looking at tonight's webinar, everyone, so by the end of this webinar, you will be able to identify the key elements of goalkeeping, the desirable qualities of an effective goalkeeper, and the key actions that coaches can incorporate into their training sessions to improve their skills. So we'll start with a quick poll of everybody who's in attendance tonight. So when I am planning my sessions, the goalkeeper is central in my thoughts. So if everybody could use the Zoom chat function, if you could just throw in either an A or a B. So A for true, B for false. So when you're planning your sessions, the goalkeeper is central in your thoughts. So I don't know, Monica, if you're able to see the chat function flowing there. So yeah. I'd say at the moment we've got 70-30 in regards to false. So an awful lot of people on the call today don't have the goalkeeper currently in their thoughts when they're planning their sessions. What's your thoughts on that one as a goalkeeper?
Yeah, look, thanks for the answer there, guys. Yes, I suppose you know, from a goalkeeping perspective, you'd obviously you want your coach to be focusing on you quite a lot in a training session. And I know from your coaches out there, you know, it is quite difficult to do that, especially if you're out there on your own. But I'm not going to go into it too much because we've a lot to cover there tonight, and you know, we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions in terms of how we start planning goalkeepers into our goalkeeping sessions. But at least we kind of have a bit of a background there, knowing that, you know, you are here today and be able to take a little bit away from it from the webinar tonight. So we'll see how we get on.
Super, thanks very much, Monica. So in relation to planning, so what I've thrown up here, so William Harmon, our coach education officer with the LGFA, ran a webinar very recently, demonstrate how to plan, layout and review a coaching session. So this is just one example of what a coaching session could look like for your normal players. And then we break off here for our goalkeepers. So as you can see, we have a group warm-up. We do our movement quality or our dynamics all together as a group. And then our goalkeepers, whether it's one or two, can break off for 3 sections. And then we bring them back in near the end of the session where we can focus on set plays such as kickouts. We could play a conditioned game and then obviously finish with a full game. Now, in relation to this, Irene, if you want to come in as our coach on tonight and give us your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I would. I'd say this is a good example of how to, you know, start a session with the keeper involved, the rest of the team, because I know it's a very specific position, but she's still a vital cog in the wheel. So having a group warm up with everyone included, then taking her away to hone the specific skills that a goalkeeper needs to constantly work on, like a forward would if they're working on their free kicks and set plays, and then go off, do that, and then come back in and be properly conditioned and ready for the game scenario that you're going to mimic in training sessions. So that's a good example of blending both the specific and the group dynamic.
Super, thanks very much, Irene. So that's just a quick and simple and easy setup in regards to planning a session. Obviously, you could go into much more detail, and we do in a webinar, which you'll find on our YouTube playlist. Okay, so when we look at goalkeeping is broken down into an awful lot of key elements. On the screen there now, you'll see the majority of the key elements which we're hoping to cover now throughout the session. And both my guests here tonight will help you break down and hopefully get some nuggets of information across to all our coaches tonight in regards to that. So we have a quick task for everybody, okay? So what we're looking for you from a coaching perspective. So what qualities do you as a coach expect from your goalkeepers? So obviously you've told us in the first section that you don't plan your goalkeepers into sessions, but what qualities do you as a coach expect from your goalkeepers then? So if you can throw that into the chat section, and then I'll ask both Monica and Irene just to have a look at the answers coming through. So we've got John here says loud, Pat, a good communicator, confidence, reliability, consistency. Some quality words coming in there. So Monica, I'll come to you first. There's an awful lot of key words coming in there in regards to the physical aspects of things. I'll let you take it off from there.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, look, some really good answers coming in there from the coaches. I think the one that keeps jumping out at me quite a lot is the communication side of things. I suppose from the coaches' point, communicator, and yeah, it is one element of the goalkeeping role that needs to be at its top of its game, but it reverts back to if we're not telling the goalkeeper what to be saying, what to be doing on the pitch, and hopefully we'll be able to touch a little bit on that tonight for you. There's obviously two aspects. We've highlighted here today the physical and the mental, and Irene's obviously going to touch on the mental, but just for me from the physical perspective, you've got a couple of points highlighted there. You've got your fast feet, consistent kickouts, fit, agile, strong, quick reflexes, coordination and vision. And obviously not in every training session you're going to be able to cover all of these aspects of a goalkeeper. So if I was to pick out maybe 2 or 3 of those, to maybe start off your goalkeepers, I'd be kind of focusing a little bit, but obviously not too much because you want to cover all aspects of the physical and the mental. I'd be touching a little bit on the coordination side of things. For a goalkeeper, it's very, very important to be good hand-eye coordination, in terms of catching the ball, timing, all that kind of stuff. So coordination is a big aspect of a goalkeeper's game. Being agile would be also another strong aspect. You want them to be, quick on their feet, easy to move, so as a goalkeeper, you want them kind of moving freely across the line out into the space, supporting their players out the field. And then finally, I'd pick there as well, it would be, to be strong, physically strong. And that would touch into a bit of the mental side of things as well, if something happens or, it doesn't go your way, that you're able to, communicate to your goalkeeper to say, look, let's forget about it, move on to the next one. So, both physically strong, not being afraid to come out and attack the ball or help your teammates. And then if a mistake does happen, to, be able to rectify it with them and say, look, girls or boys, whoever it is at the time, move on from it and we review it again in training. So they're just 3 little things. Obviously they all are very, very important, but just obviously I wanted to touch on a couple there for you today just to give you an explanation of it, but they all blend into each other, and all goalkeepers could take away from both of these here.
Thanks very much, Monica. So Irene, we'll come to you then in relation to the mental side. I know Monica has touched on communication briefly, but I'll let you take it forward from here.
Yeah, so I suppose the keeper position is very unique. You are an individual, you wear a different coloured jersey to everyone else. And as well as having physical attributes that Monica touched on, you need to have good mental strength. And as a coach, I think it's vital that you are aware of the state of mind of your keeper. And, the state of mind, ebbs and flows even within a game. You can have a bad experience, goalkeeper can have a bad experience, whether it's a bad pass. So even within the game, she can struggle. So understanding your keeper and how to communicate and talk to her, and how to maybe get her back in the game, get her back focused, maybe give her some practical examples of something that she can do to take her mind away from the negative thing that's happened, to refocus herself and get set up. So again, through the chat, I can see a couple of things, and more than a couple, a good few things that you've mentioned are mentioned here. One thing I wanted to say is just resilience. So when someone, is in goals, they make a mistake. So it's being able to take that poor performance, maybe analyze it, as Monica said, at training, and then just decompartmentalize it and take learnings from it and bring it forward. So being resilient and not taking too many negatives forward into the next game. Being a comfortable leader. So you have to be the person who's nearly orchestrating conducting your back line and your midfield. So watch out for people. If you're not sure who your goalkeeper is just yet, and you're looking for a goalkeeper, trying to find a goalkeeper, look for someone who's comfortable with leading and instructing, someone who's calm under pressure. You want someone who, because that game is so fluid and nothing is that predictable, that regardless of what situation comes before them, that they can handle it. They're three of a number of qualities, and there are probably another 8 that I could have mentioned, but they're just some.
Thanks very much, Irene, for that. So moving on then from the qualities of the keeper, the value of the goalkeeper. So here we have an investigation into the characteristics of successful performance into ladies Gaelic football. And we have 2 researchers working on this at the moment. So Glenn Kelly in TUD, and we have another student, Orna, in IT Carlow. And both of these students are working on this research on behalf of the LGFA. So it's highlighting the value of the goalkeeper. So if you look at the statistics here, we have an awful lot of short kickouts. So 61% of kickouts are inside the 45 and 39% of them are outside the 45. And we can see here the difference between winning and losing the ball, whether it's a short or long kickout. As a coach, Irene, and as a goalkeeping coach, for example, what kind of statistics stand out to you having a quick look at that screen there?
Yeah, it's just that the majority of them are short, the ones that are successful. And the majority of a keeper's job is distribution. So I can't emphasize enough the importance as a coach at spending time on the training field, at focusing in on kickouts, contested and uncontested. So your goalkeeper has to be competent and confident when she is restarting the game, that she knows what to do and where to go to. So and also incorporates your back line and your midfield making movements. So she needs to understand the strategy. She needs to understand what is expected of her and where players are going to move. So it's a collective, Stephen. It's communication and understanding from the coach to the goalkeeper what's expected of her, and then the on-field players need to know what she's going to do as well. So just spend a lot of time on your kickouts. Winning your own possession is vital.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Irene. And you can see there the difference between a winning team and a losing team on their own kickouts. There's only 5% of a difference. So it's for coaches out there, it's very important that as a team and as a whole, that our goalkeepers have the opportunity to work with their teammates in relation to kickouts. So that moves us on then to communication. And I suppose one of the most important things in regards to communication is building the rapport. And we've seen in the chat section there, Irene, the difference between our coaches talking to the players and then having the trouble or the problems with communicating with the goalkeepers and the lack of understanding there. So I think it's a very important aspect. If you want to take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so just the rapport that you have with your goalkeeper is not something that can just be developed overnight. As we approach a new season, I take this as an opportunity to start from scratch, get to know your goalkeeper or goalkeepers if there's more than one, and make sure she understands what's expected of her, and what's expected of her in terms of communicating and directing the outfield players and keeping them on their toes, keeping them marking where they should be, and in position, and whether we're attacking or defending. So equip her with the information that she needs to have to be able to conduct the team and conduct the backline, and discuss with her and consult with her when you talk about the strategy. There's no point number 2 to 15 understanding what's expected of them if the goalkeeper is not heavily involved in that. So the frustrating aspects, I presume, that come from coaches is that you just presume the goalkeeper is going to know that she's listening to you when you're giving a group instruction. She's just going to know what's expected. But that's not often the case. There's so many other things that she has to try and keep in her head. So have a one-to-one conversation with her in training when you're doing that, like a game scenario. Talk to her, be beside her, and instruct her and help her, and give her a few short, concise, specific words, triggers that she can practice in a training session, and then the outfield players will remember it and be able to respond to it in a game.
Thank you very much, Irene. So, Monica, in relation to being an inter-county goalkeeper at the moment, what is the communication you're looking for from your coaches?
Yeah, like to be fair, everything that Irene's after touching on there is spot on. Like, you know, you've got 5 points there from, you know, communication, like what you're expecting from your goalkeeper. Like Irene's correct in saying, you know, speak to your goalkeeper, you know, get to know her, get the communication right, but now give her the right words to be communicating to her players. And it's not just the 3 backs that in front of her she should be communicating. It should be the, you know, the 6 backs, the 2 midfielders, and where she can, it should be the 6 forwards as well, you know, because then you also have your forwards getting back and defending as well. So, you know, when you say to your goalkeeper, you should be talking to the backs, it's no, you should be talking to your team, you know, you should be telling, you know, whether it be the centre back or the centre half back or the midfielder, you know, telling them to direct them where to go, because I suppose from a coach perspective, you need to tell your goalkeeper that they see the whole game, they see the whole field, they see what's going on, they see that, you know, who's making the run down the side and who's making it on the opposite end of the pitch where your other players are focusing on the ball and the player they're marking. So I suppose you need to get it into their head that they have the best view of the field. So just be very, you know, wary about that when you're trying to communicate. Like, obviously don't be overwhelming your goalkeepers, you know, feeding this information into them, you know, every training session. You know, you're talking about being loud and repetitive there. It's not just about, you know, encouraging your teams, it's about giving them specific demands of what you expect each player of. And it's also your goalkeeper, for you to tell your goalkeeper to understand your players, you know, whether, you know, they're constantly a right foot, they're both foot, they're left foot, whatever it may be. Have them included in your backs training session, you know, whether it be even a quick huddle before the game or during training session, get them in, and making sure that whatever you're communicating to your 6 backs, that you have your goalkeeper in that communication setup as well. It's vitally important. Use your goalkeeper as a defender and not just as a goalkeeper isolated on its own.
Fantastic thoughts from both of you. Thank you very much. So moving on then, once we build our rapport with our players, one of the most important things, and we look at this here in regards to the principles of coaching, of how to introduce a skill or activity. And this is the same for our goalkeepers, for our backs, for our forwards, and coaching the team as a whole. We use the ideal coaching principle. So we introduce the skill, we demonstrate the skill, we explain how to execute the skill, then we allow our players or our goalkeepers to actually practice the skill, and then we look and observe from different angles. And most recently now, alongside the LGFA, the GA and Camogie have released a new Gaelic Games player pathway. So that's involving all 3 associations working off the same principles in regards to coaching. So just to keep that keenly in your thoughts for when we all go back onto the pitches next week. I suppose then when we break it down further and we're actually teaching a specific skill, we're looking for head, hands, feet. So if we go to teach an actual specific skill, so as you can see here in the photograph, Monica is picking up the ball. So head, where are her eyes looking? So eyes on the ball. Where are her hands? So her hands are in the scoop position. Where are her feet? So her toes are pointing in the direction towards the ball because she's looking to scoop and then drive forward and attack. So that's the way we want to get across our teaching points to our players. So moving on from that then, I suppose we've built rapport, we've worked on our communication with our players, and then we come to the warm-up section. So Irene, I'll let you lead off from here.
Yeah, so the warm-up from a goalkeeping point of view before a game, so warm-up before a game, an awful lot of it is just going to be about getting rid of any nerves and, I suppose, building confidence up. You may want to do some part of your warm-up with your collective team, that's fine, but the coach needs to remember that at least 15-20 minutes before a match, the goalkeeper needs to be taken aside, or goalkeepers, and mimic some of the specific movements that she can expect to have to perform in the game. And that's anything from, you know, the quick feet, moving around the box, because she's not going to be running up and down the field. But her area, her box, she's going to have to command that and be very nimble and nifty. So, you know, lateral movement, side to side, quick feet, high fielding, being able to catch the ball if it's going to drop in on top of her, under the bar, low shots, you know, shots that maybe bounce right in front of her. And that's one aspect of it. But in terms of who controls that warm-up, I'd let the goalkeeper lead. Let her tell you when she's set and ready to receive the ball. Let her tell you, the server, where and when she wants you to deliver, because if she can practice being a leader to you, she will most likely bring that forward into the match and be a leader and lead her team. And it's an opportunity for her just to get used to hearing her own voice, making the calls. So it's a huge amount of warm up. It's about a confidence builder and getting the hands on the ball. Like, she should be touching the ball like 50 to 100 times. In, you know, it's the hand-eye coordination, it's the wrists and just the mobility, and taking the warm up at her pace. So don't rush her.
Fantastic, Aaron. I suppose, Monica, so Irene kind of focused there on the match day warm-up. In relation to then your normal warm-up on a Tuesday or Thursday evening before training, what are you looking, as a goalkeeper, what do you want your coach to focus on? So we seen the plan at the start where we could involve the goalkeepers in the full group warm-up, and then they do their mobility. But then when you go off and do your own thing, are you doing a specific goalkeeping warm-up?
Yeah, so if we're looking at doing the warm up, for training, what I kind of tend to do is I reflect back on the game that we just had and find out where my weaknesses were in that game, or where I fell down in that game, or what I feel I need to work on in that game. I have that chat with whoever it is, the other goalkeeper or your goalkeeping coach, and I start to hopefully try and rectify that in the game. So it's all about, for warm-ups in your training session, they have to be intense, and they need to be a different level to warm-up games. You need to be pushing yourself to the limits in training sessions. So in terms of that, I just kind of reflect back on games I had previous and how I bring it then forward into the training sessions then a couple of days later.
Thank you very much, Monica. And then in relation to the last point here, referring to the ladies' YouTube channel, just for all our coaches out there, we have a full video of a goalkeeper specific warm-up on that channel, and we'll highlight that at the end. We have some great feedback coming in from the chat section, ladies. So Irene, I'll bring this back to you. So we see a lot of coaches getting players to take shots at goalkeepers. So someone in the audience asking, is that the wrong thing to be doing?
Well, would you like it? Whoever wrote it, would he or she just think about it? If the goalkeeper isn't warmed up sufficiently and hasn't mimicked, the stepping stones of getting to the position where she can make a full length diving save top corner, if she hasn't practiced that and built up her confidence and her physical capabilities to do it, to execute it, then the chances are she's not going to save it and her confidence will be shot. So if you're preparing before a match, I wouldn't be kicking balls at the keeper because that's really for the outfield player to get her confidence up, and that's what the majority of warm-ups are aimed towards. It's, you want to see the back of the net hitting. Sorry, you want to hear the back of the net bulging. That's what a lot of coaches want, because it gives them confidence that the forwards are ready for a game. I just wouldn't put my goalkeeper in that situation, because it has the complete opposite effect for her. It's not to say that you can't have a goal maybe to the left of that, and when the goalkeeper's ready to take a shot, that a shot at a good pace is executed. But the idea of maybe 3 cones being set out and player after player after player hitting the ball at different angles, and she's not ready for it, she could, first of all, she could injure herself, because she may not be set and the ball could hit her in her periphery and she doesn't even see it. So just take really good care of a goalkeeper. It's all about building her up before a match. You want her to be like the quarterback, orchestrating the game. You won't get the best out of her if you're focusing on trying to score a goal in the warm-up. So
I think that's a fantastic point to get across to everyone tonight, Irene. Thank you.
Right.
So that our goalkeeper warm-up is all about building her confidence, and that if we're doing an awful lot of shots, that's building up the forwards' confidence. So thank you very much for sharing. So again, following on then from the warm-up, I suppose one of the key elements of goalkeeping is handling, and Irene touched on it there about getting the strength into those hands and getting the ball into their hands as much as possible. So I suppose, Monica, following on then from that W shape, what is handling and where can we do it?
Yeah, I suppose if there's one thing from the coaches to take away today, handling will be one of the major things, from goalkeeping perspective. The goalkeeper, needs to have, like I was saying, strong wrists, strong hands. It comes back to hand-eye coordination. So, if you're teaching the handling to your goalkeeper in your next training session, these are the main points that you should be putting across to your goalkeeper. Just 2 or 3 bullet points, explain to them what handling is in terms of, is it in the W shape? Show them the exact W shape, and which way you should be catching the ball. Your hand should be soft. So if you find, especially at younger age, like, the under 12s, under 10s, 14s, that age, you kind of find, you see a lot of the goalkeepers holding their hands like this, as opposed to in the W position. And what happens there is it hits straight off the goalkeeper's hands and it's back out into the play again. So you need to be teaching them that they need to be setting their hands in a position where they feel like they've caught the ball already, so that their hands is around the ball and that their 2 thumbs are nearly touching. So keeping the hands, keeping the wrists nice and soft. Hands are constantly in front of the body, as you'll see here from the goalkeeper. You'll see her when she catches the ball, that their hands are constantly out in front of her body, and she's keeping her body behind the ball. She's also not leaning back. So when the ball comes in, make sure that your upper body, you're on your toes and you're leaning forward to catch the ball. Because if it's a really tough or a really hard shot coming through, the goalkeeper could be pushed back a bit. So it reverts back to being the physical aspect in terms of staying strong. And then finally, just being on the toes as well. Obviously feet kind of shoulder width apart on the balls of the feet, and constantly keeping on the toes at all times. So just, that's in terms of handling, it's one really important aspect of goalkeeping.
Suppose, Irene, we see you working there in the video with one of our underage players. Is there anything you'd like to talk in regards to the progressions, what we've seen there in the video?
Yeah, so I suppose in that one there again, just it's the soft hands, and just in terms of the coach, the thing I would say is treat it like a baby. You don't let it drop, and that's just one thing you can say to your players. Imagine, don't drop the baby or don't drop the egg. So that's one thing you can say to progress that. I suppose, the server could take a step back. You could go up and down the body. At the moment, that's just going to chest height. You could also work on lower balls and higher balls. So and then as the goalkeeper is comfortable, you can start moving left and right and moving her around the goals, but again at her pace.
Perfect. That's what it's all about, Irene. Building up slowly, especially we haven't been on the pitch for a very long time. So getting this simple, specific stuff in early, and then obviously moving on to that, moving around the goals at a later time. I suppose you've mentioned the high catch there, so moving on to that then, and the high ball, how important it is from a goalkeeping point of view, especially in lady sport. Yeah,
I love the high catch, and I love seeing outfield players using it. But as a goalkeeper, it's vital. It has to happen. As a coach, you need to coach it repetitively. So try and build it into your training sessions and your pre-match goalkeeping routines. If you're wondering, how do I teach it? Start from the very beginning with your goalkeeper. Get her to get the ball and throw it up, and let her know where she needs to be, where her body needs to be in relation to the ball. It needs to be in line with the ball. And then get her to make sure she's performing the W execution. And then as a development, then you can ask her to throw it up and jump up and meet the ball at its highest point. To develop it further, ask her maybe to try and emphasize the knee. So you have the leading knee going up. That will keep you in the air for longer, and it'll also protect you when you are in the goal mouth and there's forwards coming in on top of you. To advance it further, then I would ask them then to start calling their name, and just let them get used to being vocal. So whether they say keeper or their own name, but this has to happen on the training field night after night after night. to advance it further, I would put a forward in front of her uncontested, but just to be an obstacle that she perhaps needs to step aside or go through, whichever. And to advance it further, I didn't have a contested forward. And the positives, what are the advantages of spending time on this? It's great confidence for your backline to know that you have a keeper that can command her area, that will shout, tell everyone, get out of the way, I'm coming, and they know it, and the forwards will know it. So it just breeds confidence right through the team.
Some fantastic ideas there, Ryan. Thank you very much. Moving on then from the high ball, Monica, we look at diving and the importance of diving. And we looked at this last week from the player's perspective and the fear that they had. And I suppose we sent them away with the message, start the conversation with their coaches. So having started the conversation then, how do the coaches get the points across to the players?
Yeah, I suppose like you've literally hit the nail on the head there, Stephen, in terms of all goalkeepers, one of their main fears is diving. You know, whether it be a low dive, a high dive, a medium dive, whatever it may be, especially at a younger age, you know, coming up through all the different age groups. The diving is one of the main things that kind of lets goalkeepers down as they go up into, you know, the minor and the senior levels. So reverting back then from the coaches, how do I teach this to my goalkeeper to not be afraid to do diving? It's basically teaching them from the start the basics. So you'll see here in the picture that this goalkeeper, she's literally starting on her knees, and it's only 5-6 yard goal, or not even 4 or 4 yards apart. Little goal, and all she's doing is falling to the ground and catching the ball. So the first one would be on her knees. I obviously know it's progression there, but I'll just talk through it. On her knees, you've got a server 2 or 3 yards apart, serving the ball in to aim as stretch the keeper. So you want the keeper stretching all the way out to the cone. See the way she's going all the way out. Okay, the position, she has her hands in the W position, so you've already taught this. Her leg on the ground is just literally falling onto the hips, so she's only falling from knee height onto her hips. And if she attacks the ball, just explain to her that fall won't hurt her. You'll then see her opposite leg up nice and high in the air. If you explain to her that the higher she brings her leg, as she pushes back down and throws the ball back, that will bring her body back up into the position she started. So as you'll see, it brings her back up again. Then obviously then to progress it is having her on her hunkers. So her knees are off the ground and just slightly on her hunkers, and you're still serving the exact same ball in all the time. And then she's literally meeting the ball, and then she's just falling to the side. So it's just, you're basically getting her used to falling onto the ground and catching the ball. And then you progress it on then obviously to the full stance. I suppose the main thing for this is, if you're teaching your goalkeeper, this is something that you can do in training sessions and in games before match days. This is something that, you know, if I was teaching a underage team, I'd be, you know, focused on this nearly on every training session, whether it be the warm up or the main focus of the goalkeeping training session. The more keepers we have out there not being afraid to dive, the better it will be in the long run. And it's literally going back to the basics from a coaching perspective.
I suppose when we look at the dive there, Monica, we've looked at 3 separate dives, and I suppose everybody needs to be aware that we're not going to coach the 3 of them all at once on the same Tuesday evening of training, or the same Thursday evening. That how long would you take to coach those 3 different progressions?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So you're starting on the knees. So, you know, if you're going into training, you know, in the next couple of weeks, and you're trying to find, you know, you say you have a new goalkeeper starting out, you'd be focusing on these, you know, each dive, you'd have at least 2 to 3 training sessions. So that's nearly about 2 weeks of focusing on the one thing. And what I'd say to you as well is, don't progress onto something more advanced without perfecting the first one. So if she can't perfect the first dive, keep working on it. Explain to her where she's going wrong. So she's on her knees there and you feel like she hasn't perfected that dive, whether it be to her right or to her left, there's no point progressing to the next stage because she still hasn't perfected it. So, you know, that's just basically, you know, telling her what she's doing wrong, telling her to improve, encouraging her. So it takes as long as it takes, but there is a point where you have to, you know, start onto the next stage, and then you progress it on to your the hunkers and then full standing.
Fantastic, Monica. Thank you. And Charles in the chat says here, when starting with a new keeper, I use mats, which gives them a confidence that they won't hurt themselves. So thanks very much for sharing that, Charles. Suppose, Irene, you mentioned previously about moving, so when we're at the handing phase, moving the goalkeeper around her box. So focusing on footwork here, if you'd like to take us on.
Yeah, so I suppose it's alongside diving, you need to work on your feet work. The dive should only really come into play if your feet can't get across across your post quick enough, you know. So to underpinning diving, it's your feet work, and then if you can get across the post quick enough, it could be the difference between making a comfortable save into your hands and being upright as opposed to diving. So short, concise, small steps. So if you're wondering as a coach, what am I trying to teach my goalkeeper, is that the set position, you know, her feet should be shoulder width apart, and when she's moving across her box, that stance doesn't change. The separation between her left and right leg shouldn't increase. No big steps, because if you increase the steps, it increases the likelihood of perhaps her falling over, or, you know, because not every goal mate is clean and it's even. There's a lot of uneven goal mates around the country. So short, concise steps on the balls of your feet, and moving forward. Your momentum is taking you forward. So get off the back two cogs. You should the front four cogs only on the ground. In the line, down the line. So what do we mean by that? I suppose, let me just close this function in the chat. So you want to make sure that you are between the ball and the goals. You always want to know where you are in connection to the goals. Always know that, you know, you have the black spot above you, and then as the ball moves left or right, that you move in line with that. You can always touch near post. Going down the line means advancing and coming down, advancing up your line, meeting the player and closing the angle. If you stay on your line and the person with the ball is 14 yards out, then you leave her with such a wide option to shoot from. If she's on the 14-yard line and you advance, all she sees is you in your jersey, and she then has to make a decision of going around you or taking a shot, and that could just hit you. Obviously, if the ball is out of field, around midfield, I'm not as concerned. You're obviously watching the play and orchestrating your backs. But as the ball comes in closer and closer, you're going to have to make a decision. So as a coach, you need to train your goalkeeper with your backs, replicating scenarios of 1-on-1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. And it's only by practice. So I can't even tell you what should happen right now, because it depends on who the player it's attacking is. Is she left-footed, right-footed, and what angle it is. And so as a coach, you just need to facilitate the different situations in a game as often as you can, and tell her to be brave, be there on the end line in a training session, and tell her to come out. She won't hurt herself, but give her the tools, show her how to block left and right. So the worst thing she can do is stand the line, but you need to help her get that out of her head, I suppose, Stephen, is what I'd say.
So
it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one to
It is indeed, Erin, and I suppose you touched on it there with the different angles. You know, as a coach, you're facilitating the learning for the goalkeeper. And here we just have one idea of how to facilitate such a thing.
Yeah, so you see there, Linda's moving her feet, she takes the first shot, and then she's gone for the rebound, and she doesn't have to make a dive and save because she's moved her feet quick enough. So again, in every training session, and definitely before a match, work on the quick feet. And we'll talk later on about equipment that you can use to help you with that. But I can just mean the difference between having to make a dive and save and having no extra protection. Whereas if Linda even drops that ball there now, she has her body that is a second line of defence. So you want a goalkeeper who's nimble and fast and quick on her feet. Fantastic,
Irene. Thanks very much. And I suppose Irene mentioned there in the line, down the line, which takes us on to the 1v1s. So Monica, I suppose if you want to lead out from this one.
Yeah, no problem, Stephen. Obviously, Irene touched on it a little bit as well. One thing as well, like one of the main aspects that we need to be teaching our goalkeepers is the 1v1s, because it happens, on average 2-3 times a game, like, you know. So if there's one things that we could look at, my teaching her, you'll see there then the very bottom picture, you see a goalkeeper lying on the ground. I suppose what we need to teach the goalkeeper first is actually blocking the ball, you know, and not being afraid for a shot coming in and putting your body behind the ball, because ultimately that's what a 1v1 is. So things like, you know, strengthening up a keeper in terms of, you see the keeper just lying on the ground there, and she is the forward is just kicking the ball at her, and that's literally just a matter of just the ball being kicked out and she's just blocking it and stopping it. From the goalkeeper's perspective, in terms of when they're on the line, that they have the confidence to come off their line. They need to come off. They have to, you know, it comes back to in the line, down the line, having their angles right and their positioning right. Like Irene said, the worst thing that they can do for a 1v1 is stay on the goal line. If you could imagine your goalkeeper standing in the middle of the goal on the goal line and the forward coming in, just imagine in your head, you're forward, how big that goal is. And they have all the space to shoot in goal. Whereas if you then put your mind frame from the goalkeeper's perspective, goal on the goal line, the more you move forward to the attacker, the narrower the angle becomes. So you're making the goal smaller. So all you need to do is to drill into your goalkeeper that if a 1v1 comes in, that they're coming off the line, they're not diving straight in, attacking the player, they're slowly building it up so that when the attacker comes in, they're making it difficult for them, that they're not going, you know, straight in, so that all the forward has to do is bounce the ball and they're around the keeper. So it's slowly building them up to get them off the line, show them how to actually block a ball in terms of a 1v1, and then building up their confidence from that. So obviously you can see there from the photos, the build up from it, starting on the ground, hip height, and then full standing. So they're little things that you can incorporate from your goalkeepers from a 1v1. But the main thing I take away from a 1v1 is that if you're telling your goalkeepers, the worst thing they can do is stand on the goal line, especially in a 1v1 situation, because you're making the goal bigger for the forward. You need your goalkeeper to make it smaller for the forward, and by doing that is cutting out your angles.
I suppose again, Monica, you're highlighting there how important communication is. So communication between the coach and the goalkeeper, between the goalkeeper and her defenders. And then again, you've highlighted that photo at the bottom there in relation to building up the confidence. You know, some young girls maybe, and boys 12, 13 years of age, won't want to dive, and that the confidence has to be built up by them actually lying on the ground in that W position and practice, you know, those small progressions. And then we have here our under 17s competition a few years ago, what it looks like full out. So again, our goalkeeper coming off her line and, you know, putting all those bows together from her handling, her diving, her communication, and highlighting how good she can be in a 1v1 situation. Suppose moving on from that, hopefully in a 1v1 situation, when we win the ball, Irene, and then we get the ball back ourselves, or maybe we've made a save and it's gone behind and we have a restart. So how important distribution is.
Yeah, I'd say about 70% of a keeper's role is probably distribution, whether it's through the hand or through the foot. So again, can't overemphasize the importance of giving your goalkeeper the opportunity to practice this in training. I would say make sure it's a calm environment when you're doing it. Again, that she's setting the tone. Going back now training, make sure that you don't be asking her to kick the ball 50 yards. Let her develop that muscle in her leg again. I don't know if it could take a couple of months to get back to where she was, maybe longer. So just be cognizant of that. She's not going to be able to kick the ball straight away as far as she maybe was this time last year. So slowly and steady, you want to build her back up. But where we have here on the screen, we have little rectangles. You could replicate that on the field. Just put down 4 cones to the left-hand side of your pitch, and just ask the keeper, you know, whatever her name is, just kick the ball 10 times into that square. There mightn't be anyone in it, but you just want to see how accurate she is. And a keeper will probably be more accurate on one side as the other, but it's important to practice both, the left and the middle and the right, obviously. So that's just an example at the most minimum level, just a square, no one in it, just kick the ball into the square. You can advance that by having one or two players moving from one rectangle to the next. So it's players moving. But at all stages, you should try and replicate the situation of a game whereby you're going to your goal post, you're picking up the ball, you're walking out the 14-meter line of the 21, and then you're looking up, and then you're kicking the ball. So you're not kicking from the end line. You're doing it at the right distance and taking your time. And I would say you put your most skillful player in goals, because she has to be so accurate, because an outfield player has an opportunity to win the ball back if she gives a bad pass. There's other players in the field that can help her get it back. If a goalkeeper delivers a bad kick out, there is no comeback. The risk is huge. So her accuracy has to be so much higher than an outfield player's. So that's why I would emphasize, from a coach's point of view, you need to emphasize the importance of practicing, giving your goalkeeper the opportunity to practice that skill.
Thanks very much, Irene. I suppose, Monica, in relation to this and the type of drills, how much focus do you put on your range of passing? So you're short, you're long, going from are you right-footed and kicking to the left-hand side, or being right-footed and kicking to the right-hand side? How much focus do you put on this?
From a player's perspective, that's something I focus on in every training session. It's not, we'll do it this week and maybe give it a miss next week. I suppose what we need to kind of obviously explain to the coaches is that, the goalkeeping position is probably the most important position on the field, in my opinion. And, people would agree, people would disagree, but I suppose you need to make sure that your goalkeeper is practicing kickouts. Bear in mind, your goalkeeper mightn't make one save in a game. Your goalkeeper mightn't have to jump for the ball. Your goalkeeper mightn't even have to catch a ball in a game, depending on how things are going. But one thing's for sure, your goalkeeper's going to have to kick a ball out. So what I would say to you is you should be practicing kickouts every single training session. It goes back to as well the goalkeeper communicating with her outfield players. The simple drill, like Irene's after speaking to you about there, focusing on set plays, the communication between the goalkeepers and the players outfield. And I suppose what you have to do, bear in mind, and it still happens to me, as a current player, that I miss kickouts. I don't see a spare player and I miss that kick out. And maybe you as a coach would see that, and that is frustrating. But that's something that you can't, especially to younger kids, highlight there and then, screaming and shouting at her on the sideline. It's something that you review and talk about again in the training session. So I suppose what you need to understand as well about kickouts is that you're one player, a goalkeeper is one player, and she has 20, 25 players in front of her, all looking for the ball off her, and they're all running in different directions. So that's something that you need to be very conscious of in terms of kickouts when it comes to your goalkeeper. But I go back to what Stephen was saying, that's something I practice in every training session. It would be nearly my kickouts. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I suppose if any of our coaches are looking at designing patterns of play, again, William Harman has a fantastic warm-up on designing patterns of play, and it's a full breakdown of how to plan, demonstrate, and then implement those patterns of play in relation to kickouts. So, obviously you'll have patterns of play for free kicks, sideline balls, or attacking plays, but as Monica and Irene have both pointed out there, the importance of kickouts and retaining possession, as we've seen in our research previously, that 75% of short kickouts, if they're won, that's a winning team that does that. So thank you very much for both sharing. So we just have a quick question in relation to something that Irene said there. So Irene, I'll give this to you. Do you think a girl that can play outfield would make a better goalkeeper? As I find my daughter played half forward and also goalkeeper, and her reading of the game is good because of the outfield play.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If you look at Stephen Cluxton, he plays full forward for his club, or did for a long, long time, played in goals for Dublin. And there are advantages, even if it's not the full season, but there definitely are advantages to experiencing what the other position is like. So if you're an outfield player, go in goals, and vice versa. If you're a goalkeeper, go outfield, I know from playing I used to play full back for my club and then in goals for the county, but knowing both positions definitely helped me. And understanding an outfield player and what I think she might do, and when she opens up her foot, where is the ball likely to go? But if I'm a goalkeeper and I've never tried that, I've never been in an attacking situation, then it might be harder to understand. So as a coach, I definitely would be given opportunities to a goalkeeper in training to play outfield. And if she likes it, why not let her play outfield? And if there are good outfield players that you think have potential, why not try them in goals? And I suppose we'll talk about it later, but there is a way in which you can sell the position to the outfield player. At the end of the day, you need to get someone who's probably, as I said, the most skillful player on the field to be in goals, because it's like filling a bath water. If you've got the stopper out, you're leaking goals, you're leaking water. It's no good how many goals you score if you're going to be leaking at the other end. So just, you need to put an awful lot of emphasis, and it's a brand new season now. Emphasize a goalkeeper this year and just observe the difference it can make on the team as a whole.
That's a fantastic point here, Orion. I suppose if we have a few common questions coming in relation to when we identify goalkeepers and at what age group should we focus. And in fairness, our friends in Ulster LGFA will be focusing on identifying the next generation of goalkeepers. And that's April 28th at 8 p.m. So that would be another webinar to focus on that specific area following on from here. So thanks very much, Irene and Monica, for focusing on those points. I suppose then, we've looked at communication, we've talked about building the confidence. So psychologically wise, Monica, a goalkeeper needs to be able to do an awful lot of things, if you want to take it from here. Yeah,
I suppose, every goalkeeper, has to be, tuned in to every game, and it's something that all goalkeepers would struggle with in terms of whether it be communication, confidence being knocked, whatever it may be. One of three main things that you can take away from today to bring to your goalkeeper is get them to start maintaining concentration for the entire game, and not just the start of the game or at the end of the game because you're winning or because you're losing, vice versa, whatever it may be. Have them tuned into whatever, maybe give them a buzzword in terms of what if I say something from the sideline, what's going to get them tuned into the game. Because from coaches, you all know you could be winning a game and your goalkeeper mightn't touch the ball for 15-20 minutes sometimes, and that is hard to lose concentration. So it is, like, I know myself, like, that's still something that I struggle with and something I maintain in focusing on in my training sessions and in my games. It is something that's quite hard to maintain concentration for the full game. You can drift off, and it is something that from a goalkeeper, from the coach's perspective, you need to be very aware of with your goalkeeper. Making mistakes, how you are going to react as a coach. I suppose what I'd say to you is the worst thing you could do from a coach perspective is give out to your goalkeeper on match day if they make a mistake, because bear in mind their confidence is already knocked from the goal after going in or the mistake they've made, and then hearing it from you on the sideline is just putting them down even more. They know they have made a mistake, whether it be they didn't catch the ball or they didn't come out off the line or they missed the kick out. They already know. So what I'd say to you there is, encourage them. Just be like, forget that, next ball. And what I do then is go back to the training session and talk to them about that mistake that happened in the game. Get their opinion on it. How did you feel, you did in the game? And that's one question that's, would be constantly asked to me as a goalkeeper, how did I feel I did in the game? And you'd have to have trust in your keeper that they'd answer you honestly. And if you feel like they didn't, you can put it across in terms of, well, this is where we feel like, could you have come out here? Ask the question, could you have come out? Could you have caught that ball? And see what their response is. It comes back to, again, communication, both on the field, off the field, with your management, with your players, everything. So that's one point I take away from the coach's perspective. Confidence building, your role as a coach. So again, on the sideline. If they make a mistake, it's reverting back to keep encouraging them, keep talking to them. You know, you'll know straight away when a goalkeeper makes a mistake, and you'll know how they'll react to it. And the problem is, if that happens in the first 2 or 3 minutes of a game, your goalkeeper is gone for the game. And that happens, you know, I've seen it happen. I'm sure all of you out there have seen it happen. I'm sure Irene has seen it happen. And it's just about a matter of getting your goalkeeper back to the way she was in that warm-up, when you knew she was well able to catch a ball, communicate to your team, she was confident going into the game. And whether it be that, you know, it's just the one person on the sideline that's constantly communicating to her and not 5 or 6 people, do you know what I mean? Or whether it be even one your fullback, you know, or your captain, you know, saying to your goalkeeper, forget about it, it's gone. It's having that communication, that one person that's constantly communicating to you, and not the worst thing you can have is 5 or 6 people shouting in at you every time, you know, something happens or the goalkeeper makes a mistake. You know, they're just 3 different things you can take away from the psychological side of things. It's a whole world out there from a goalkeeper's perspective when it comes to psychology. I'm sure I even know, like, every goalkeeper has their up and down days, including myself, and it's just something as a goalkeeper that you gain with experience over the years. You know, you're teaching underage kids, young kids, you know, they will get knocks along the way, but those knocks will make them stronger. I think what we need to come in on that when you're coaching your goalkeeper, that every goalkeeper and every player learns from their mistakes. So letting them make that mistake, the main thing is, if you can get them to learn from it, then you're getting a result.
Some fantastic sharing there, Monica. Thank you very much. And I suppose we can relate this back to our players' perspective webinar we had last week, where we focused on the player and psychologically how they can get over mistakes. I don't know if you wanted to come in there from a coaching side of things, Irene, in relation to the psychology.
Yeah, it goes back to having a good rapport with your goalkeeper. And then as well, you know, whether it's halftime or after the game or at the next training session, like, remind the outfield players, like, look what happened. You're there to protect the goalkeeper and the goals, and you didn't do your job. So as a collective, everyone has to take a portion of the blame. The person who shouldn't take any of the blame is the goalkeeper, but, you know, she normally does. And the thing is, both from a physical and a mental point of view, the goalkeeper is the bravest girl on the field. Physically, she's putting her body in the line, and in the line of a ball that could be hit at a very fast pace, a letter ball, could be very sore. And she has to build up her resilience to that physical hit, but mentally, the resilience to be able to maybe not make a save and then have to pick the ball up out of the net and then have to perform an executed distribution, and knowing that she can't falter. Wind maybe could be playing a factor against the wind. She hasn't got any room for error. So it's a tough job. Those at the very, very top of their game struggle with it as well. There's not a goalkeeper in the world that doesn't struggle with it. So just so you know, and I want you to emphasize this to your keepers, it's part and parcel of it. So you need to maybe help them remember, or we're going to work on this, and I'll make sure that you're not as exposed the next time. So put the emphasis back on the outfield players, perhaps in training, put them in goals to realize what it's like. Because sometimes people think, well, that's a goalkeeper and that's it, that's her job, and they never experience it themselves. So if you really want to make a difference, just change things up a little. But it's a work in progress. There's no quick fix. So just again, goes back to rapport, having a good rapport with your keeper. And I'm sure, and like Monica said, that listening to her. If she's down, you know, listen to her, give her a break. Maybe she'll say, I was really bad, I was no good under the high ball. We'll say, well, next weekend or next week, we'll work on that and build her back up again.
Fantastic points, Seneca, ladies sharing ideas. And again, confidence building, rapport and communication, 3 points that keep coming up. So thank you very much. I suppose, Irene, every coach loves their gadgets. And I suppose you touched on it in relation to footwork and positioning. So what kind of stuff can we use to coach our players?
Yeah, like if you're thinking of the keeper at home herself, even in her back garden, if she has brothers or sisters or parents that can help her, or when she's on the field with you, you can incorporate ladders. That's brilliant for feet work. And I'd say the outfield players could benefit from ladders as well. Quick feet, you know, being able to move and left, right and evade tacklers. The ladder is really good for the keeper because it helps her move left and right of the goal. So that goal mouth, she doesn't have to run 100 meters, but she has to move 10 meters, probably faster than anyone else in the field. So sprinting left, right, that's really important. Tennis balls and golf balls, again, someone mentioned about whether to use a medicine ball. When you change the sizes of the ball that you use, whether you go bigger or smaller, your hand and eye coordination has to adjust. And so if you use a medicine ball, I suppose it's heavier. So then when you go back to the ball, it's so light, and you can probably see an improvement. With the tennis and golf balls, again, you're working on you might want to work on your peripheral vision. Maybe there might be a server coming for your left and your right. And it just means that when you go back to the size 4 football, you'll see an improvement. So it's a good fun thing to bring in. Again, if you're trying to find your keeper, maybe you haven't got one yet, having fun games that includes things like tennis balls could be the carrot to bring someone into, maybe, God, this is really good fun, I want to do this. Obviously footballs and cones, I only ever really work on my own. If I had cones, a football and a goalpost, I was happy, and I've had someone to serve me, then that's all I needed. Yeah, hurdles as well. Hurdles are good, I suppose, if you're in the goal mouth and maybe you want to improve on your springboard, and if you want to get that top corner save.
I suppose that was one thing that was questioned earlier, in relation to young girls at 14, 15 years of age going into that big goals and, being, the ball coming in just under the crossbar. So I think it is very important that we do actually physically coach our goalkeepers and our players how to jump in the proper technique. So hurdles can be an advantage in regards to that. So we're going to move on to 2 scenarios here. So if I can get everybody to use the chat function on the Zoom. So just one scenario, and we're trying to get people to share ideas. So you've just taken over a new team and you've become aware that the club has no goalkeeper. What would you do? So what would you do in this situation? And I'll throw this to you, Irene. So if we got you to take over a new team and you become aware that there's no goalkeeper, what can we do?
Well, first of all, I probably at the start when we talked about maybe little drills that we can do that are goalkeeper specific. I'd probably try and incorporate some goalkeeper specific training into my collective training. I'd keep an eye out and see who has the attributes that I think is required, who is a leader, who wants to stand out, who wants to be different, who doesn't want to go along with the rest of the gang. Who has really good distribution, who's got really good feet, who really makes sure that when she's given a kick pass, a punt pass to her teammate, that she wants to make sure it goes straight in to the chest. So they're the sort of things that you're looking out for. I then maybe would take her and a few others aside and say, "Hi, girls, next Saturday, we're going to work specifically on goalkeeping and go through the drills and make it fun. If you can, make it an enjoyable experience and talk it up. Talk about how much of a leader you can be, how influential you can be to the team, how you can literally, you can orchestrate, you can be my assistant manager, for want of a better word, have so much emphasis and control on the field. That could be something you could do.
Fantastic, Aaron. And again, everybody is sharing their ideas in the chat. And in fairness, I think your idea is absolutely fantastic of having a goalkeeper-centered approach to a training session that involves everybody. So that goalkeeper will be able to stand out for you. And in fairness, anytime we did goalkeeper training ourselves is probably the most fun we have as well. So moving on then to our second scenario, Monica, I'm going to bring this to you specifically because I know this happens all the time in your own club. So it is midway through the league or championship and you have just lost your goalkeeper through injury, holidays or exams. What would you do? In relation to this affecting you, Monica, so I know you're the only goalkeeper in your club. So when you're away with county and they have a match, they do struggle. So what would you do in this situation?
Yeah, I'm sure this is a scenario that happens in quite a lot of clubs, and I suppose from my perspective, if I ever got injured or I was away or something came up, and I'm not able to play in my club, it usually goes back to the centre back, usually popping in goals. Now she's not reluctant or anything like that. She's very much aware that she's obviously a more senior player, so she kind of understands the game, understands the position, because she's played in front of me for so long. We have a good understanding like that. She would go in goals, and that's currently what's happening in my club at the moment. To kind of answer the question that's been asked, like how do we deal with this? I suppose what you need to take away from coaches is you need to ask yourself this question at the start of every season. You know, how many goalkeepers do I have, and what's the plan and what's the schedule of games for the year? And you need to be able to manage that for the year. Obviously, you know, you can't anticipate your goalkeeper getting, you know, anyone could get injured at any stage, you know, but, you know, in terms of, you know, holidays, exams, knowing, you know, when your games and stuff are, and having that communication with your goalkeeper. So what I'd say is prepare for it. And like Irene was saying, if you only have one goalkeeper, the first thing that you need to do is run a goalkeeping session for 20-25 players that you have, based on goalkeeping. Now, if you have an hour and a half of a training session, you don't need to do the full hour and a half. Do 40 minutes, 45 minutes based on goalkeeping, and it reverts back to you selling it to your team, that if you are seeing it from the top in terms of the coach, that goalkeeping, and if we haven't got a goalkeeper, we will suffer in games, and that's it. Like, goals will go in. You know, if your goalkeeper gets injured and there's no one there, you know, you're opening up yourself to, you know, major, you know, a major loss. Like, so what I would do is I would base you need to go and source out another goalkeeper for your team, and that reverts back to selling the position to your players and telling them that if, say, you know, Monica is not here to play this game on whatever date, we need someone to go in goals. But ask the question to them, because you never know. In some clubs, someone might put up their hand and say, yeah, I'd actually like to go in goals. And then you have a couple of weeks to turn it around and say, well, look, you're going in goals this day, for this game. So don't be afraid to ask the question first. The worst thing you could do is go in and just pick somebody, and you not knowing that actually, well, you know, Irene wanted to actually go in goals in that game. So I think that's very important to note as well, to ask the question to your players, and then work from there. You might get 2 or 3 people to say, you know, like, for an example, it could be a sub that hasn't got a game in the last 5 or 6 games and wants to get on the pitch, wants to have a jersey, wants to be able to step out on the pitch and play for her team, and she'll put her hand up and say, well, yeah, I'll go in goals. And it reverts back then to selling the position in terms of what to get, the one-to-one training, and you know, stepping up, being a leader on the pitch. And then on the other side of that, then making sure that if you had nobody, if nobody put their hand up, it reverts back then to saying, well, guys, we're 4 foot in one training session for goalkeeping training only. And that's when you tell them we pick someone out of that training session to stand in goals for that game.
I suppose, Irene, when we talk about marketing the position that Monica has touched on, and you previously, we think back to Liam Neeson. You have a specific set of skills, and how important a goalkeeper is.
Yeah, I suppose if you've never played in goal, it's kind of hard to sell it, or hard to explain it. But I think it's be comparable with a full forward scoring a goal, and that's what I would compare me making a save or Monica making a save, and that adrenaline rush. So that's what I'm saying. If you can get a player trained and in a game where that happens, you know, that in itself could be the building block for her going, I actually really enjoy this, because, you know, not many other players will get the opportunity, like a full forward or a corner forward, that would have the same thrills as a goalkeeper, only the goalkeeper. So, you know, the fullback will probably never experience the highs of saving a penalty or scoring a goal. So it's quite similar to the highs of scoring a goal in that respect. So a very specific set of skills that I think if you can play in goals, you can play in any position. That's why I say no goalkeeping session is wasted on any outfield player. If you think, you know, if you go through any of the things that Will has prepared in terms of examples of goalkeeping training sessions, use them on your outfield players, because it'll only benefit them. Selling it then, yeah, as I said, just, even a diving session can be so much fun. I just really enjoy it, but you need to get the players to do it for them to realize it. If you've never done it yourself, it's probably a hard one to sell. So I could sell it all day long because I've done it and enjoy it, and Monica could probably do the same. Just once they're having fun, it kind of can just lead itself into where it's supposed to go, I think.
I completely agree with you. Thank you very much for sharing, Irene and Monica. I suppose that leads us then on to finishing up the session. So in relation to the learning from tonight, everyone, if you could use the chat function. So I'm just wondering, what is the one thing you will do differently in your next coaching session as a result of listening to this webinar? So if you wouldn't mind sharing. And I see Stephen Murta here. I'm watching an under 19 boys training as I speak, and all players are taking shots at the goalkeeper. So I suppose in that session there, Stephen, we're not building the confidence of our goalkeeper. So that could be one thing Stephen's going to take away from the session tonight. Is there any one point, Irene, I suppose you'd like for everybody to take away if we're going to take just one point away from tonight?
Because can't overemphasize building the keeper up, physically, giving her the attributes, giving her the skill set, giving her the time of day. You know, we're goalkeepers. That's why we're doing this webinar. We're so under-resourced, so forgotten about. When I played, I used to go very far. I go miles down the country. If it meant I could get one-to-one specialized training, I'd pay whatever money it was if I thought it was going to make me better. And I'm sure Monica would be the exact same. So if you, as a coach, you don't need to have been a goalkeeping coach in your previous life to help someone. You just give them the facility. You just be a server, and you will see a change, and you just basically just facilitating her to blossom and to grow and be the keeper that she has the potential to be.
Very good. And Monica, in relation to yourself, is there one thing you'd like the coaches on tonight to take away and maybe focus going forward?
Yeah, I echo everything Irene's after saying. From her perspective, if there's one thing I'd like to highlight would be for the coaches to realise that the goalkeeping position is the most important position on the pitch. You know, some people will agree and some people will disagree, but all you need to do is look at your statistics of a game, you know, in terms of, you know, we touched back on the kickouts and stuff like that. It's all about, you know, retention and building your keeper's confidence to be the best keeper they can be. So, you know, you look back at your games you've played and review statistics of it in terms of, you know, what has the goalkeeper done, what can I help the goalkeeper improve, and how will it improve the overall aspect of the game. And I do think, you know, from my perspective, it is the most important position on the field. And that's just from me, from a goalkeeper's perspective. You know, people may agree, may disagree, but I would think, yeah, it's the most important position. And if you as a coach are singing that from from every training session, it won't only be drilled into your players, your goalkeeper, sorry, it will be drilled into your players. And I think that's most important, that if every player is knowing that this is one of the most important positions on the pitch, all the players will buy into that as well, and that will help you progress in your games.
In fairness, Monica, Morgan in the chat completely agrees with you that the goalkeeper is the most important position. So thanks, Morgan. So in relation to what comes next, everyone. So we do, as an LGFA organisation, have a coaching the goalkeeping workshop that you can book. Obviously, it's a face-to-face and it's very practical. So hopefully sooner rather than later we can get working on that workshop again with you as clubs or counties. We also have a ladies football TV YouTube channel, and I would urge you all, before, I know up the north the clubs are back already, so have a look at it, but those going back next Monday as well, I urge you to go onto that YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel, the LGFA Goalkeeper, where there's videos specifically for the goalkeeping session. So we have a full warm-up video, we have the videos breaking down handling, footwork, and all the key instructions from Irene on those videos. As I mentioned previously, we do have a coach education playlist as well. William Harmon, our coach education officer, has some fantastic sessions in relation to how to plan, layout and view a coaching session. As I mentioned, we have the goalkeeper specific playlist and the coach education playlist. As you'll see here, there's the YouTube channel. You go to the playlist section, there's our LGFA goalkeeper. I suppose from my point of view, I would just like to thank Irene and Monica for sharing tonight. If anybody has any questions, if you'd like to hit up the two ladies now, it's an opportunity. I see the chat is flying through there. William's in the background. He's shared the email address of where you'd like to book a course, development support at lgfa.ie. Obviously, I do reiterate that is a face-to-face course, so be mindful. We have to be back at level 1 for that. So if anybody has any questions for Irene or Monica, throw them into the chat. I think William has probably covered most of the questions coming through. Margaret, how to integrate a young keeper to an adult squad? I suppose, Irene, if you'd like to touch on that possibly.
So how to integrate a young goalkeeper into an adult squad?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think at 15, 16 years of age, if they're good enough, they're old enough to play on the adult team. Well, that was the case back in my day. Do you know something? It goes back to what I said earlier on about the goalkeeper setting the tone for her coaching and the warm-ups. If she can tell her server what she wants, I don't think age should come into it. And I'm definitely one that likes to step away from and avoid using age on the field. You know, the old ones or new ones or young ones. I just don't like that. I think age is just a number, and it shouldn't be an issue. So you can be young. You can be young and very, very good leader, and you can be old and be very shy. So just don't focus on that, on the age, and just encourage her. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So on behalf of Leinster LGFA and National LGFA, Monica Mcgurk from me, thank you very much. Irene Munley from me, thank you very much for tonight. To all of you who attended, much appreciated for being on the call tonight. I reiterate, we have the YouTube channel with the playlist there. All your coach education videos will be there and webinars in relation to research. So thank you very much for joining us tonight.